But first, the headlines.
Israel vows to completely destroy Hamas as retaliatory bombing campaign sends the death toll spiraling, with 1,200 Israelis and 2,100 Palestinians killed in the war.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu forges emergency government to direct war against Hamas. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant vows to wipe Palestinian militant group off the face of the earth over deadly weekend attack.
US President Biden says he has seen confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children in southern Israel. News comes following initial reports that up to 40 children were butchered over the weekend in homes near Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip.
India puts in place a major operation to evacuate citizens from conflict-hit Israel. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar announces special chartered flights being arranged to bring Indians back home from Israel.
At least 4 passengers killed and 70 others injured as 6 coaches of Delhi Kamakhya North-East Express derailed near Buxar's Raghunathpur station in India's state of Bihar.
And it is day 6 of the war in Israel. At least 51 people were killed in Gaza after a series of Israeli air raids, which continue as we speak, taking the total death toll in the Hamas-ruled region to over 1,100.
Now, Israel endured a massive multi-pronged surprise attack from Hamas on Saturday, triggering another war. Over 1,200 people have been killed in Israel so far as the war drags on into its 6th day. Here are the top developments at this hour. The Israeli Prime Minister vowed to wipe Hamas off the face of the earth shortly after forming an emergency unity government.
Addressing the newly formed war cabinet, Benjamin Netanyahu declared, and I'm quoting him here, "Every Hamas member is a dead man." Netanyahu has temporarily settled his political differences by including centrist former Defense Minister Benny Gantz in the new government formed for the duration of the crisis.
Israel has amassed thousands of troops, tanks and other heavy armor around Gaza as it executes a total siege of the Strip before launching a ground offensive. The threat of a multi-front war is looming large as Israel came under fresh attacks on its northern borders from militant groups in neighboring Lebanon and Syria.
Well, supplies ran low in the Gaza Strip, where power went out last evening after the only power station in the territory ran out of fuel. With this, all medical facilities risk going out of operation within days, triggering a greater humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
The United Nations says 11 of its volunteers have been killed in the Israeli air raids in Gaza. Other international aid groups have also reported volunteer fatalities in Gaza. The aid groups have demanded a humanitarian corridor into the blockaded Strip.
Meanwhile, the US President Joe Biden also made his first call for restraint over Israel's response to the Hamas attacks. He has urged Israel to abide by the rules of war, even as more arms and ammunition supplies from Washington arrived in Israel.
The United States confirmed at least 22 American citizens have been killed in Israel. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken left to visit the battling US ally, but the United States, it's still not been able to ascertain the number of Americans taken hostage by the Hamas group.
And fears mount in Israel over the fate of at least 150 hostages held in Gaza by the Hamas militant group. The group claims to have released 3 hostages, including 2 children and a woman, but awaiting official confirmation. The Israeli media has, however, denied the claim, saying that the 3 were never taken hostage in the first place.
The militant group also claimed that 4 captives died in Israeli strikes. Earlier, they threatened to kill other hostages if civilian targets are bombed without advanced warning from Israel.
Now, the Hamas group have come under heavy criticism for its brutal attack on Israel, where reports say that its fighter killed babies there as they went on a rampage in Israeli settlements on Saturday. Now, the US President Joe Biden says he had seen pictures of beheaded children among the casualties in Israel.
Reports of beheaded children have not been confirmed by the Israeli Defense Forces, but Biden nonetheless expressed his disgust at the reported atrocities.
Meanwhile, unrest flared in the West Bank as well, where demonstrations have been held in support with Gaza. So far, at least 27 Palestinians have been killed in clashes in the West Bank that have been recurring since Saturday.
Finally, the Israeli security forces came under fresh criticism after a US congressional panel chairperson confirmed that Israel was warned by Egypt of a potential violence 3 days before Hamas's attack. Earlier, the Israeli Prime Minister rejected reports of warning from Egypt as absolutely false.
And for more on this, we're now being joined by Jonathan Watchell, former Director of Communications and Senior Policy Advisor at the US Mission to the United Nations. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, sir.
Pleasure.
Right, so these are unprecedented times. UN Chief Antonio Guterres has clearly warned against a spillover of the Israel-Hamas conflict. I want to seek your assessment as to how imminent is the threat of a regional conflagration.
I think we're already there, aren't we? We already see the action between Israel as it tries to eliminate the Hamas militants who created such a horrific atrocities in Israel, including the murder of children and burning of people alive. The visuals have been outrageous and just confounding to humanity, just terrible, like ISIS. And then, of course, there is concern for the Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip who, are going to become collateral damage as Israel tries to take out these Hamas fighters and stop the rocket fire and enact revenge and an end to the danger that's posed by Hamas. And then the international nature of this is we're already seeing Hezbollah rocket exchanges with the Israelis across the blue line up along the Lebanese border between Israel and Lebanon. So we're already kind of in that place, and things can spiral into more of a regional conflict easily.
So the Israeli military has said that it has amassed military troops near the borders with Gaza, Israel pounding Gaza with airstrikes. How imminent is the threat of a ground incursion? And also, as you mentioned as well, how would Israeli forces discern between Hamas militants and innocent civilians?
A ground invasion is anticipated given the massing of troops and given what the set goals of the Israeli Defense Forces have been. And, they're fully backed by the Israeli public that is completely freaked out by what has transpired and feels extremely vulnerable and really has had enough of having a neighbor that, through the Oslo Accords and the invitation of Yasser Arafat and his men from Tunis to take over leadership roles in that strip and in the West Bank and to try to work toward peace, instead ended up in a nightmare scenario in which the leadership of that strip is run by militants with a charter that explicitly calls for the destruction of Israel. So it's a zero-sum game that the parties are in right now, and now it's escalated to a level that it isn't just something of tit for tat and containment, this is the most serious of all confrontations between Israel and Hamas.
Absolutely, sir. I mean, the humanitarian cost of the war between Israel and Hamas is rising. The death toll is rising on both the sides of the war. And during a roundtable with leaders from the U.S. Jewish community, U.S. President Joe Biden mentioned seeing the confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children. While on the other hand, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is also slated to reach Israel today. How do you assess the United States' involvement in the conflict?
Well, there's direct involvement of the United States in that there are American citizens who have died at the hands of Hamas and are being held hostage by Hamas. Also American involvement because obviously Israel is a very close ally of the United States. There's tremendous concern about Iranian participation in this, whether it's simply to the level, and simple is not said in the context of a simple thing, but limited to providing military and training and equipment to be able to pull off this stunning surprise attack on Israel, taking out all of the communications infrastructure and monitoring along the border, and then plowing through the fence and then causing these massacres across southern Israel. But there's a wider concern about, what happens here with Iran and its support of Hezbollah and its much stronger militant group in terms of sheer numbers and the weaponry that they possess in the tens of thousands of rockets and precision-guided Iranian missiles that are in their arsenal, and the possibility of a conflagration opening up at that border that would then have a response from Israel that would cause death and destruction on both sides, well beyond probably what we've seen already between the Gaza Strip and Israel.
So thank you so much for joining us on WION or with your insights on this.
Pleasure.
Moving on now, as we continue our rolling coverage of the Israel-Hamas conflict, we bring you live visuals from the Gaza Strip, which has been under heavy bombardment from the Israeli side. Israel has bombed more than 200 locations in Gaza so far after Israel announced complete siege of the Gaza Strip. Well, currently these are the visuals. The situation appears to be calm at the moment, but as I mentioned earlier, it has been under heavy bombardment after Israel announced a complete siege of the Gaza Strip. These are the live visuals from Gaza. We'll continue getting you live visuals from Gaza throughout our coverage today.
And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that every Hamas member is a dead man. After the first meeting of his country's emergency government, the announcement of the new cabinet comes in the wake of savage attacks by Hamas militants.
Now, this was from the Gaza Strip. The emergency unity government will have a war cabinet that includes Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, opposition leader and a retired army general Benny Gantz, Israel's current defense minister Yoav Gallant, former chief of general staff of the Israel Defense Forces Gadi Eisenhower, and the current Minister of Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer.
Right. 2 other top officials will also serve alongside the 5-member war cabinet as observer members. According to the officials, the new unity government will not pass any legislations or decisions that are not connected to the war as the fighting continues in Israel.
Former Prime Minister Yair Lapid, another opposition leader, will have the option to join this new war cabinet. As per the new war cabinet, and I quote here, during the war period, no bills or government decisions will be promoted that do not concern the conduct of war. All senior appointments will be automatically extended during the war period.
אנחנו ניגשים להצעת חוק חוזרות הכנסת ה-24 מימון מפלגות התשפ"ב 2022 להצעת החוק.
And US President Joe Biden has expressed his deep concerns about the devastating attack allegedly carried out by Hamas militants near Gaza during a roundtable with leaders from the US Jewish community. President Biden mentioned seeing, as we mentioned earlier, the confirmed pictures of militants beheading children.
Absolutely, him. Biden has clearly vowed support for Israel in the ongoing war, and Biden strongly condemned the act and made it clear that downplaying Hamas's atrocities and blaming the Jewish people is unthinkable. He emphasized the importance of Americans seeing the reality of what is happening, and in the latest meeting with the Jewish leaders at the White House, the Biden administration also sent a message to Iran to exercise caution. Take a listen.
You know, among those who have been victimized, this evil, who've been killed, are at least 22 American citizens. This attack was a campaign of pure cruelty, not just hate, but pure cruelty against the Jewish people. And I would argue it's the deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust. The deadliest day since the Holocaust. We're surging additional military assistance to the Israeli Defense Force, including ammunition, interceptors to replenish the Iron Dome, and we've moved the U.S. carrier fleet to the Eastern Mediterranean, and we're sending more fighter jets there in that region, and made it clear to the Iranians, be careful.
Now, the spokesperson for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reported that toddlers and kids in Kfar Aza, kibbutz in southern Israel, were found with their heads decapitated after the attack. Biden further acknowledged the support of countries, including Arab nations like the United Arab Emirates, in these difficult times. He recently had a call with the UAE president where they discussed Israel's right to defend itself.
This along with the importance of providing humanitarian assistance to those in need. According to the reports, the attack in Kfar Aza could emerge as the scene of the biggest massacre of the ongoing state of war.
Now, the attack by the Hamas militant group, it's killed over 1,200 people in Israel, injuring over 3,000, taking several hostages to Gaza. Now, according to the U.S. military, there are no signs of other adversaries planning to attack Israel after the deadly surprise attack by the Hamas militant group. This according to the Air Force General of the United States.
Well, the United States has also deployed the U.S. Air Force F-35, F-15, F-16 and A-10 fighter aircraft squadrons in the region, and they've also moved top Israeli air defenses and munition stockpiles as Israel moves against Hamas in the ongoing conflict.
And Israel has vowed the complete destruction of the Hamas militant group as it continues to pound the Gaza Strip. Troubles are growing for the dense population residing in the area.
Absolutely, Haim. There's a growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza right now. And as many international stakeholders have chosen to side with Israel, questions rises on their silence on Gaza's misery.
U.S. State Department spokesperson was asked about the condition of Palestinians. However, he seemed to dodge the question. Listen in.
Let me just speak to this. Number three, some of the questions I'm getting today do seem to ignore the fact that Israel just had hundreds of its citizens killed, people who were taken hostage, and pretend that Israel shouldn't be able to conduct any kind of. Let me just say, shouldn't you asked a question? I will answer the question.
Okay, that's my question.
So I'm going to start by answering the previous question that was interrupted. I will say some of the questions seem to pretend that Israel should not be able to conduct operations to defend itself and hold accountable the terrorists who killed civilians. Those terrorists launched this activity knowing that there would be retaliation, knowing that Israel would have to defend itself as any country did, knowing that it would lead to the unfortunate loss of civilian lives by Palestinians, and they did anyway.
Israel has intensified its offensive with more airstrikes. Multiple explosions were reported overnight in Gaza. In the last 24 hours, Israeli strikes have demolished several neighborhoods.
Entire neighborhoods have now turned into wastelands of rubble. As per figures provided by the Palestinian Foreign Ministry, more than 22,600 residential units, 10 health facilities and 48 schools have been destroyed so far in the Israeli retaliatory airstrikes.
Now the death toll. On the Gazan side, it's climbed to 1,100 and over 5,000 are injured. Hospitals in Gaza are overwhelmed and are experiencing shortage of drugs and supplies.
Extremely concerning at the moment. Meanwhile, the Gaza Strip has plunged into darkness. Israel has blocked water, electricity and fuel from entering the area as it has warned to tighten the siege until Hamas threat is removed.
And while the war in Gaza rages on, violence has also risen in the West Bank. At least 27 Palestinians have been killed in clashes with Israeli security forces as Palestinian factions call on to join the fight alongside Hamas.
And as the conflict between Israel and the Hamas militant group rages on, countries have been working towards bringing home the people from the war-torn zone.
In the latest, India has announced the launch of Operation Ajay to repatriate citizens from Israel starting today. Israel is home to about 18,000 Indian citizens.
Well, the Indian government has arranged special chartered flights to facilitate the early return of Indians. The Indian Navy ships are also expected to be deployed in case required.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, in a post on social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, posted about the operation's launch. He said that the government is fully committed towards the safety of Indian nationals abroad.
Now, the first lot of Indians who earlier had registered to return have been informed, and the Indian Embassy in Israel informed that these people are expected to fly back to India today on the first special flight.
The return of other people will follow in subsequent flights. Meanwhile, several other nations have arranged repatriation flights from Tel Aviv in reaction to the conflict in Israel. For instance, the Danish government made available a C-130 Hercules cargo plane which can carry about 120 passengers for the evacuation of its citizens.
Meanwhile, Italy had also arranged for 7 flights as a part of efforts to repatriate about 900 Italians from Israel.
Delta Airlines, it's working with the U.S. government to assist with the repatriation of U.S. citizens who want to return home. And with that, it's time now for a short break.
But don't go anywhere.
On the other side, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is headed to Israel. His mission in West Asia is largely to prevent a wider war, even as Washington is strongly backing Israel in the war against Hamas. We'll get you all you need to know about this.
Also on the other side, Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives have nominated Steve Scalise to be the chamber's next speaker. We'll get you all the details right after this very short break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching World DNA.
I could not go.
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine
and the tensions that had been gathering steam over the course of the last several weeks and months.
The siren has gone off. I don't know if you can hear in the background what's going on. I'm going into the shelter now. So it's a very, very serious situation here across Israel. It's a state of emergency.
The United States stands with Israel.
Well, we are starting this broadcast with a developing story from West Asia, where Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Hamas has launched a war against the state of Israel.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
A new drug is making a difference in the fight against Alzheimer's. This medicine helps slow down a patient's cognitive decline.
We look beyond the text. We give you context.
Is China preparing for a war in the Himalayas? And tonight, we come to you with some proof.
Hypocrisy is stunning.
Do leaders mean what they say? Do they ever say what they mean? To find out how real news affects you, your decisions.
Just when Iran took one step in the right direction, its moral police is planning to drag it further back. And once again, the victim will be women.
Watch Gravitas.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in.
We don't impose our views.
Did India threaten to ban Twitter? Either that or Jack Dorsey is lying to you.
That is Gravitas. We let life breathe through our show. Gravitas, the informed show for an intelligent audience.
Hello, welcome to This World. Vladimir Amelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that the world should be ruled by democracies.
I was interviewing you on television a couple of weeks back.
That's right.
And you said, if you really want to understand Jerusalem, why don't you come here and see it?
And you came.
Here I am. Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Why this cannot be fixed?
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population.
The problem here is Trump has been able to make the argument that this is a political prosecution and that he's being singled out unfairly.
Defend our nation. You are saying we could have a cure for cancer.
We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade, and they're going to come from India.
Downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos followed me on Twitter, and all kinds of crazy amounts of people have been contacting us.
The show where we get you the week's biggest stories from around this world. What is the India story? It's the story of the world's biggest democracy.
We are developing the road infrastructure. In the end of 24, it will be equivalent to the road infrastructure of USA.
We have now entered the growth phase. And I believe that the
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. This is World DNA. Let's start by looking at the headlines first.
Israel vows to completely destroy Hamas as retaliatory bombing campaign sends the death toll spiraling, with 1,200 Israelis and 1,100 Palestinians killed in the war.
This attack was a campaign of pure cruelty not just hate, but pure cruelty against the Jewish people.
In a meeting with Jewish leaders at the White House, US President Joe Biden says the message to Iran was to exercise caution.
Palestinian militant group Hamas claims to have released an Israeli woman and her 2 children it said had been detained during fighting with the Israeli forces.
Republicans nominate Steve Scalise as their candidate for Speaker of the House of Representatives as they seek to heal bitter internal divisions paralyzing their domestic agenda and preventing action on the Israel crisis.
NASA reveals that a sample collected from the 4.5 billion-year-old asteroid contains abundant water and carbon, offering more evidence for the theory that life on Earth was seeded from outer space.
And the US has deployed the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier group near Israel. My colleague Haim breaks down the key features of the US Navy's newest and most advanced aircraft carrier. Haim, over to you.
Thank you so much, Raisha. Now, the Hamas attack, it marked the biggest and deadliest incursion into Israel since Egypt and Syria launched a sudden assault in a bid to reclaim lost territory in the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago. The United States has deployed the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier group near Israel. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the US Navy's newest and most advanced aircraft carrier, is accompanied by cruisers and destroyers, and here's all you need to know about the mighty warship. The warship is capable of carrying the US Navy's most advanced fighters, electronic attack aircraft, helicopters and unmanned aerial vehicles. Among them are F-35 and F-18 fighters and MH-60 helicopters. Now, the warship is able to recover and launch various short takeoff and vertical landing aircraft flown by the United States Marine Corps. The Gerald R. Ford also has a smaller island that sits farther back on the ship to make it quicker to refuel, rearm and relaunch planes. Legacy steam-powered systems have been replaced with electric drive components. The ship has a 50-year lifespan. The nuclear power plant is it's designed to allow operation for 20 years without refueling. Advanced weapon elevators provide faster movement of ordnance from magazines to aircraft, and the electromagnetic powered aircraft launch system that provides accurate end speed control with smooth acceleration at both high and low speeds. So the system possesses the energy capacity to support an increased launch envelope and a capability of also launching both current and future carrier air wing platforms. The advanced arresting gear that provides the warship with the ability to recover carrier-based tailhook-equipped aircraft. The advanced arresting gear allows for the recovery of a broad range of aircraft. It also reduces the fatigue impact load on the recovered platforms. The warship length is over 1,000 feet. The flight deck width, that's 256 feet. The warship, it has a displacement of approximately 100,000 long tons full load. Now, the Gerald R. Ford, it can hit cruising speeds of over 30 knots. More than 4,000 crew members ensure flawless execution of all operational tasks here. The warship can count on over 75 aircraft at any given point of time. Gerald R. Ford armament, it consists of evolved Sea Sparrow missile, rolling airframe missile and close-in weapon system. And the show of force, it's a signal that the United States, it's ready to respond to anything from possibly interdicting additional weapons from reaching Hamas and also conducting surveillance. And the carrier strike force elements can defend against conventional surface-to-surface missiles and against long-range ballistic missiles Iran might be tempted to employ on Israeli targets. Back to you, Resha.
Thanks for all those updates, Haim. We're still on with our continuous coverage of the Israel-Hamas conflict. In the latest, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is headed to Israel. His mission in West Asia is largely to prevent a wider war, even as Washington is strongly backing Israel in the war against Hamas militant group. And in a show of support with Washington's closest West Asia ally, Blinken will meet senior Israeli officials, possibly including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to discuss further strengthening military support for Israel as the war enters day 6.
Before departure, Blinken said he was going with a very simple and clear message that the United States has Israel's back. He will work with regional U.S. allies to try and secure the release of the 150 hostages held by Hamas in Gaza, some of whom may be American citizens.
Hamas gunmen rampaged through Israeli towns over the weekend, killing over 1,200 people and taking scores of hostages to Gaza. Well, at least 22 Americans were killed during the attack. And Israel retaliated with the airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, which continues as we speak. Over 1,100 people have been killed in relentless airstrikes on Gaza, which is under a total siege by the Israeli forces since Tuesday.
Now, a top priority for Blinken will be to convey a message of deterrence. Any such message will likely be aimed at Iran and Iran-backed groups such as Lebanon's Hezbollah to stop a wider war from erupting. The U.S. president has already cautioned Iran in very clear terms.
We're surging additional military assistance to the Israeli Defense Force, including ammunition, interceptors to replenish the Iron Dome, and we've moved the U.S. carrier fleet to the Eastern Mediterranean, and we're sending more fighter jets there in that region, and made it clear to the Iranians, be careful.
Well, Blinken's trip announcement does not include a visit to West Bank. On previous trips to the region, Blinken visited the West Bank controlled by the Palestinian Authority.
Now, earlier we'd spoken to our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who gives us more details on the backdrop of Blinken's trip. Listen in.
As U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken heads to Israel and then Jordan, we now learn that the State Department is also making preparations to help thousands of Americans who are in Israel and are having trouble getting on either commercial flights or leaving the country by land. The State Department will provide charter flights for those individuals. Now, Blinken's trip also comes at a time when U.S. President Joe Biden, speaking to a group of Jewish leaders, said that the United States is doing everything in its power to help release the hostages in Hamas captivity. He said that he cannot share the specifics and details for obvious reasons, but we do know through the White House that the United States may be asking Qatar for help regarding those hostages. Also, it's important to take note of Blinken's trip to Jordan. We do know Jordan is home to many Palestinians, and the King of Jordan recently released a statement saying that there will not be peace in the Middle East nor stability unless there is a Palestinian state.
In other global news, the Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives, they've nominated Steve Scalise to be the chamber's next speaker.
And this follows last week's ouster of Kevin McCarthy. McCarthy was the third consecutive Republican speaker to leave the top post due to pressure from his hard-right flank.
Well, 58-year-old Scalise will require winning the support of a majority of the House, which Republicans control by a 221 to 212 majority. And he has garnered support from most members of the Republican caucus. And he has pledged to unite the caucus as well.
First, I want to thank my House Republican colleagues for just designating me as the Speaker. Obviously, we still have work to do. We're going to have to go upstairs on the House floor and resolve this and then get the House opened again. We have a lot of work to do, not just in the House for the people of this country, but we see how dangerous of a world it is and how things can change so quickly.
Now, the House went into recess without scheduling any floor action as Scalise and his allies worked the halls and corridors of Congress to corral as much support as possible. White House is hoping House Republicans get their affairs in order and stop the chaos to select a new speaker. This is the Republicans sought to heal bitter internal divisions, paralyzing their domestic agenda and preventing action on the Israel crisis.
Look, I hope that the House Republicans gets their affairs in order and stops the chaos so that we can, they can select the speakers that of their choosing so that we can move forward and do the people's business.
Scalise defeated Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan to win the nomination. He now faces a scramble to win over almost all of Jordan's supporters before a speaker vote by the full House, where all 212 Democrats will back their own leader and New York Congressman Hakeem Jeffries.
And our correspondent Susan Tehrani also runs us through the GOP's move to nominate Scalise and how the larger Republican Party views him and his nomination. Listen in.
By Wednesday late afternoon, Steve Scalise was short of the 217 votes needed to become the next Speaker of the House. Some Republicans are holding out, notably from the Freedom Caucus. They say they don't trust him. Although he's a lot more conservative than McCarthy, he's been in Republican leadership for many years. Scalise started talking to GOP members individually to get their votes. There are about a dozen holdouts, and it's yet to be seen whether or not a consensus will be met anytime soon. Some Republicans say that they will ultimately vote for Jim Jordan, which was his competitor and rival. Others say that they simply just won't vote for Scalise, at least not now. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World This Way.
And the European Union has issued a stern warning to social media giants, urging them to crack down on the spread of illegal content and misinformation.
EU Industry Chief Thierry Breton highlighted concerns about misleading information, doctored images and mislabeled videos surrounding the West Asia violence. These companies now have 24 hours to demonstrate their plans for eliminating harmful content on the platforms.
Absolutely, Haim. Now, the European Commission has reminded all social media companies of their legal obligation to prevent the spread of harmful content associated with Hamas.
Now, it's emphasized that content linked to Hamas qualifies as terrorist content and is illegal under both the Digital Services Act and Terrorist Content Online Regulation. The DSA mandates large online platforms, including X and Meta's Facebook, to remove illegal content and address risks to public security and civic discourse.
Well, the consequences for tech companies failing to comply with the DSA are severe. Number one, they could face fines of up to 6% of their global turnover, and repeat offenders might even face the possibility of being banned from operating in Europe altogether. While it remains unclear if similar warnings were issued to other social media companies under the DSA.
And Samsung Electronics is defying expectations as their Q3 profits stage a comeback.
Right, the global tech giant announced an initial profit drop of 78%, surpassing forecasts as the troubled memory chip market shows early signs of revival. Our next report gets you all the details. Take a look.
Samsung had a tough quarter.
but just a little less tough than expected. The South Korean tech giant said Wednesday that preliminary third quarter profit plunged by 78%, hitting just under $1.8 billion. That was better than analysts had expected, however, and lifted sentiment on the company and the sector. Samsung shares were up around 4% by mid-morning following the news. The firm is the world's largest maker of memory chips and smartphones. It's taken a hit as a global economic slowdown and high interest rates crimp demand for consumer goods. That has seen prices for chips take a tumble. But analysts say there are now signs that prices are at least stabilising or, in some cases, starting to rebound. Samsung also benefited by focusing more on high-end semiconductors used for applications like artificial intelligence. It cut production of older chip designs. The company's mobile phone business likely saw profits at around the same level as last year. The quarter saw it launch premium foldable handsets, helping to drum up demand even as the global phone market sags. Samsung will publish full details of its earnings at the end of the month.
And let's shift our focus to the world of cryptocurrency.
Here's some good news for owners of Ether, the second largest cryptocurrency. Crypto token Ether could rise more than 5-fold in value by the end of 2026.
And this is according to the global bank Standard Chartered. The bank predicts that Ether may hit $8,000 over the next 2 years. And this bold prediction is based on the fact that Ether is proving to be an important player in the emerging digital economy.
Its smart contract functionality is a distinguishing factor. It automatically executes transactions if certain conditions are met without the need for an intermediary. Ether is said to have a brighter future due to its diverse applications. It's true that the value of cryptocurrencies is fraught with difficulty. The price of crypto tokens are generally driven by sentiment of the investors.
Right, but what we can't ignore is that Ether has been gaining traction in the crypto market. Its value has risen 30% this year. It seems this forecast may influence other banks and financial institutions to reassess their stance on cryptocurrencies in today's time.
On to news now from the world of sport. ODI World Cup hosts India warmed up for their marquee clash against rivals Pakistan in style.
And skipper Rohit Sharma slammed a record-breaking century as the two-time champions crushed Afghanistan by 8 wickets in Delhi.
And the pitch was batting paradise, and it came as no surprise with Hasmatullah Shahidi won the toss and elected to bat first. Afghanistan started cautiously but lost Ibrahim Zadran just after the power play for 22. Hardik Pandya then removed Ramanullah Gurbaz with 63 runs on board in the 13th over.
Rehmat Shah fell in the very next over to Shardul Thakur, who replaced Ravichandra Ashwin in the playing 11 then. And Captain Shahidi and Hazimutullah Umrzai played sensibly and shared a 121-run partnership for the 4th wicket. Well, both scored half-centuries and exploited the true nature of the pitch with some calculated hitting.
Pandya dismissed Omarzai for 62. After that, the Afghans could not really accelerate and lost 4 wickets in the last 10 overs. They ultimately ended their innings for 272 for 8. Bumrah was India's best bowler with figures of 4 for 39.
Sharma was dismissed for a duck in the previous match against Australia and came out with intent during the chase. Well, the men in blue raced away to 47 runs in the 6th over power play. Sharma completed his 50 in the 8th over with a boundary. He then dispatched the next ball for a maximum to go past Chris Gale's record of most sixes in international cricket.
The Indian skipper smashed the bowlers all over the park and reached his 163 balls. He is now the only batter to score 7 World Cup tons. And Ishan Kishan, who played the second fiddle to Sharma, was dismissed for 47 with 156 runs on the scoreboard in the 19th over. Sharma got out on 131 of 84 balls in the 26th over. He smashed 16 fours and 5 sixes. Local boy Virat Kohli scored an unbeaten 50 and along with Shreyas Iyer took Team India home in the 35 overs.
And time now to see as to what is happening in the world of entertainment in our showbiz wrap. Well, Hollywood stars have been breaking their silence over the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Actor Dwayne Johnson has also weighed in on the issue. He made a post on social media denouncing all acts of terrorism and also expressing his sorrow over the loss of innocent lives. He said, and I'm quoting him here, "I'm heartbroken, angry and sickened by the brutal murders and kidnapping of Jewish people through the horrific acts of the Hamas terrorist group." However, he also added that it is important to understand the context of the issue and acknowledge its complexity.
Just a day before the release of Taylor Swift's concert film, reports are suggesting that the movie is all set to shatter box office records. If reports are to be believed, Taylor Swift The Eras Tour will mark a $200 million global debut. Distributed by MC Theatres, The Eras Tour is set to screen at over 8,500 cinemas in around 100 countries. And the movie that features Swift's highly successful music tour has already broken many records even before its release. And Swifties in North America just cannot wait for the film, which is set to hit screens on the 13th of October.
American actor and talk show host Jada Pinkett Smith has revealed that she and her husband Will Smith have been living separate lives since 2016. Pinkett Smith made these revelations in a new interview. Further, the actor added that the pair are not technically divorced, but they are no longer together romantically. Well, last year, Oscar-winning actor Will Smith slapped Chris Rock during the 95th Academy Awards after Rock cracked a joke on his wife.
Well, are you a cinephile? Do you love going to exhibitions related to artists? If you are, this next story is for you.
Celebration, and as I said many times, we weren't allowed the general public, come to my office. So now it's out of the office so the whole world can see.
Are very important to Spike. We wanted to try to fit it in as many as we could, which we did, and also just make sure that everything was done respectfully, that we're really kind of giving the objects a moment to kind of breathe and show off themselves, but how they're all connected.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World DNA.
Stay tuned. Global news continues on the other side, right here on WION The World.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine, and the tensions that had been gathering steam over the course of the last several weeks and months.
The siren has gone off. I don't know if you can hear in the background what's going on. I'm going into the shelter now. So it's a very, very serious situation here across Israel. It's a state of emergency.
The United States stands with Israel.
Well, we are starting this broadcast with a developing story from West Asia, where Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Hamas has launched a war against the state of Israel.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
A new drug is making a difference in the fight against Alzheimer's. This medicine helps slow down a patient's cognitive decline.
We look beyond the text. We give you context.
Is China preparing for a war in the Himalayas? And tonight, we come to you with some proof.
Hypocrisy is stunning.
Do leaders mean what they say? Do they ever say what they mean? To find out how real news affects you, your decisions.
Just when Iran took one step in the right direction, its moral police is planning to drag it further back. And once again, the victim will be women.
Watch Gravitas.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in.
We don't impose our views.
Did India threaten to ban Twitter? Either that or Jack Dorsey is lying to you.
That is Gravitas. We let life breathe through our show. Gravitas, the informed show for an intelligent audience.
Hello, welcome to This World. Vladimir Omelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that world should be ruled by democracies.
I was interviewing you on television a couple of weeks back.
That's right.
And you said, if you really want to understand Jerusalem, why don't you come here and see it?
And you came.
Here I am. Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Why this cannot be fixed?
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population.
The problem here is Trump has been able to make the argument that this is a political prosecution and that he's being singled out unfairly.
Defend our nation.
You are saying we could have a cure for cancer.
We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade. And they're going to come from India.
Downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos...
Welcome back. You're watching WION World is One with me, Aditi Singh. And as the Israel-Hamas war enters its 6th day now, we get you all the latest updates. But first, let's take a look at the top headlines. Israel-Hamas war death toll climbs to at least 2,300 on both sides. Over 1,200 Israelis and 1,100 Palestinians killed after 5 days of intense fighting. Palestinian militant group Hamas claims to have released an Israeli woman and her 2 children. It is said that they detained during fighting with Israeli forces. Hours after US President Joe Biden claims seeing pictures of beheaded Israeli children, White House administration officials tells US media neither Biden nor the administration have seen pictures or confirmed reports of children or infants beheaded by Hamas. The United States is encouraging its international partners to use their influence with Hamas and its supporters in Iran to get the militants to stand down after their assault on Israel. Arab foreign ministers denounce Israel's siege of Gaza following shock attack by Palestinian militants at emergency meeting in Cairo, demand aid be immediately allowed to enter the blockaded enclave.